Have you ever stopped to think about what's actually going on in your brain when you're scrolling through your social media feed? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of why we fall for, and yep, even spread, misinformation. It's a pretty fascinating look at our own digital habits, so let's get right into it.
Okay, picture this. You're scrolling, right? And a friend, someone you really trust, shares an article with a totally jaw-dropping headline. Before you've even read past the first sentence, you feel that little twitch in your thumb, hovering right over the share button. What is that? What's that impulse all about? Well, that's the exact question we're going to unpack today.
And this really gets us to the heart of the puzzle. I mean, we are just swimming in an ocean of information and, let's be honest, misinformation online. So what is it that truly grabs us and persuades us? Is it a really solid, logical argument in a story? Or is it something else entirely? Something happening in the background that kind of guides what we believe and what we feel we just have to share?
Well, lucky for us, some researchers at the University of Arizona were just as curious. In 2020, they set up an experiment to figure out what's really pulling the strings when we come face-to-face with both true and fake news. Now, to really get what the study found, we first have to talk about a key psychological theory they used. It's called the Elaboration Likelihood Model, and the basic idea is that we have two different ways of thinking. You could almost call them two online brains that we use to process information.
So the Elaboration Likelihood Model, or ELM for short, is a huge deal in the world of persuasion. All it really says is that depending on how much a topic matters to us, our brain takes one of two different routes to make a decision. Are we going to slow down and really analyze it, or are we going to take a quick and easy mental shortcut? Okay, the easiest way to think about this is with a little metaphor. First, you've got your autopilot brain. This is the fast lane, the peripheral route. It's quick, it's intuitive, and it relies on simple cues, like who is talking, not so much what they're actually saying. And then you have your detective brain. This is the central route. This one is slow, it's analytical, and it gets out its magnifying glass to carefully look at the evidence and the quality of the arguments. So, let's talk about what happens when that autopilot brain is in the driver's seat. You know, when we're just casually scrolling, not super engaged, what does our brain actually latch onto? In autopilot mode, our brain is looking for those mental shortcuts, what scientists call peripheral cues. And this study focused on two really big ones. The first is source credibility. You know, how much do we trust the person or the news outlet sharing the story? And the second is source likability. Basically, does the website look good? Is it professional, slick, and appealing to the eye? So, the first finding is probably not going to blow your mind. The researchers confirmed that yes, when we see a source as credible, we are way more likely to believe what they're saying. Makes total sense, right? Of course, trust matters. But here's where it gets really weird. The study found something completely counterintuitive. That trusted source, it actually gave a bigger boost to the believability of fake news than it did to true news. I'm going to say that again, because it's wild. A credible messenger is actually more effective at making you believe a lie than they are at making you believe a truth. And this just perfectly shows the danger of staying on autopilot. When we only rely on that shortcut of trusting the messenger, our guard is down. That trust, it becomes a vulnerability, a back door that lets misinformation sneak right past our defenses. Okay, but what happens when we switch off the autopilot? What about when we fire up our detective brain? Let's flip the coin and see what happens when we stop looking at who's talking and start focusing on what they're saying. So, when our detective brain is on the case, the thing that matters most is something called argument quality. This is all about the meat of the article. Is the information logical? Does it all add up? Is it consistent? We're not taking shortcuts anymore. We are actually analyzing the evidence.
This is that central route we were talking about. We're thinking slowly, we're being deliberate, and all those superficial things like how fancy the website looks, they just fade into the background. What takes center stage is the actual substance of the article.
And here is the good news, the really encouraging part. The study found that when we engage this detective brain, it works. When you compare stories with the same level of argument quality, we are significantly more likely to believe the true news story over the fake one. It shows that when we actually slow down and think, we're pretty darn good at telling what's real. Okay, so we've got a pretty clear picture of what makes us believe something. But what about what makes us share it? This is where the study uncovered its most surprising and, frankly, kind of concerning finding. I mean, you'd think it's a straight line, right? If we use our detective brain, analyze a story, and figure out, hey, this is true and well argued, then of course we'd be more likely to share that than some junk fake news. It's just logical. But is that what really happens?
The researchers took a look at what actually predicts whether someone intends to share an article. And a few things popped up. Our own biases, of course, how much we believe the story, that makes sense, and here they are again, those peripheral cues, the credibility and the likability of the source. Now, all of those factors seem pretty reasonable, but the real bombshell, the thing that made everyone lean in, was what was completely missing from that list. After you account for all those other things, there was one major factor that had basically zero impact on our decision to share. Argument quality. The logical consistency, the strength of the evidence, the very thing our detective brain uses to find the truth, had no significant effect on whether people would share an article. None. And that is the absolute core paradox of this whole thing. We use the message, the argument quality, to decide what we should believe. But we use the messenger, the source's credibility and style, to decide what we should share. It turns out our sharing habit is almost completely driven by our autopilot brain. Now, before we all get too depressed about the state of the internet, there is a silver lining here. While the quality of an argument didn't push us to share true stories more, the study also found that we aren't automatically more likely to share fake news either. The truth and the lies are kind of on a level playing field, just waiting to see which brain we decide to use. And that really brings us to the final crucial takeaway. We tend to believe with our detective brain, but we share with our autopilot brain. So the next time your thumb is hovering over that share button, maybe just pause for a second and ask yourself a simple question. Which brain am I using right now?